Before the first bomb fell, before the skies turned black with Spitfires and Messerschmitts, Britain stood on the edge of annihilation. Hitler's armies had conquered Europe with terrifying speed, sweeping across France, Belgium, and the Low Countries, leaving only the English Channel as a thin line of defense. And yet, in the darkest hour, it would not be tanks or artillery, but 300 pilots and their flying machines that held the fate of a nation in the balance. This is their story, the story of courage, of sacrifice, of audacity against impossible odds. The story of how a handful of men and the country they protected stared down the Luftwaffe and said, "Not today." In the summer of 1940, Europe was already a graveyard of empires. France had fallen in 6 weeks. A blitzkrieg of tanks, artillery, and terror, leaving behind shattered cities and fleeing civilians. Belgium and the Netherlands had crumbled under the speed of the Wehrmacht's advance. Britain, standing across the Channel, watched in stunned horror as Hitler's shadow fell across the continent. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, newly installed in 1940, faced a nation gripped by fear. The Royal Navy could protect the waters, but air superiority over England was fragile, uncertain. If the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, gained control of the skies, Operation Sea Lion, Hitler's planned invasion of Britain, would become inevitable. It was in this climate of dread that the Royal Air Force called upon a select group of pilots, young men, many barely out of school, some from other nations, driven by the same sense of duty and defiance. Around 300 pilots would become the vanguard of Britain's survival. These men flew Spitfires and Hurricanes, machines as fragile as they were magnificent. The Spitfire, with its sleek design and superior maneuverability, became a symbol of hope, while the sturdy Hurricane, often overlooked, proved its worth time and again in battle. The pilots were ordinary men with extraordinary resolve. They endured freezing skies, relentless sorties, and the constant specter of death. Every flight was a gamble, every engagement a test of courage. The German High Command believed air superiority was the key to invasion. The Luftwaffe's plan was meticulous. First, destroy the RAF, then bomb Britain into submission, and finally cross the Channel to occupy. Bomber formations stretched across the skies in menacing swarms. Messerschmitts and Heinkels dominated the day, their engines a roar of impending doom. Yet the Luftwaffe underestimated the British spirit and the ingenuity of RAF tactics. Radar, a new technology, gave Britain a critical edge. Chain-home radar stations along the coast detected incoming raids, allowing Fighter Command to deploy pilots with precision. It was a technological leap that, combined with human bravery, would redefine modern warfare. The first skirmishes were terrifying. Hurricanes and Spitfires leapt into the sky against formations of Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Pilots faced not only enemy fire, but the cold, high winds and fatigue. Johnny Johnson, one of the RAF's most celebrated aces, recalled the adrenaline and terror of those days. You climbed into the sky knowing death could come at any moment, but you also knew that the country behind you depended on you. Dogfights were chaotic, high-speed ballet in the clouds. Planes twisted and turned, engines screaming, bullets whizzing past, leaving trails of smoke and fire. For every victory, there were losses. For every city saved, there were scars on the land and in the hearts of the pilots. As the Luftwaffe shifted its tactics to bombing major cities, the battle became not just a fight for air superiority, but a war for the spirit of a nation. London endured the Blitz, a relentless bombing campaign intended to break morale.
But the people refused to bow. Air raid sirens became a daily rhythm. Civilians huddled in shelters, listening to the distant roar of bombers and the sharp crack of anti-aircraft fire. Above them, the few, Britain's pilots, danced on the edge of death, intercepting enemy formations, sometimes outnumbered 10-1. Every sortie was a story of courage, every pilot a guardian of a nation's hope. In a time when the world seemed on the brink, these men held the line, their resolve in skill carving a path through the chaos that would define the future of Britain and the course of the war. The skies over southern England became a battlefield of smoke and steel. Each morning brought the rumble of engines, the distant hum of Messerschmitts approaching from across the channel. Radar stations had detected them, and the few scrambled, climbing into clouds streaked with sunlight and the shadow of war. The Luftwaffe came in waves, hundreds of bombers escorted by fighters, intent on breaking the RAF and preparing the way for invasion. Hurricanes and Spitfires surged into the air, a small swarm of defiance against a storm of firepower. Pilots twisted and turned, chasing enemy aircraft through the sun-drenched sky. Every maneuver a fight for survival. The air was a deafening chorus of engines, machine guns, and exploding bombs. Below, civilians watched from the streets or huddled in shelters, feeling the tremors of near misses. Above, the pilots had no choice but to confront the terror directly, knowing that the lives of millions depended on their skill, courage, and sheer determination. The Spitfires, agile and fast, darted through the formations, cutting into the German bombers' ranks. Hurricanes, sturdier and dependable, took on the escort fighters, holding the enemy at bay. The few relied not only on their aircraft, but on instinct, training, and the support of radar operators guiding them toward incoming waves.
In the skies above Kent and Sussex, the battles raged like a storm. Pilots like Douglas Bader, flying with artificial legs after a tragic accident, inspired by sheer will and audacity, became legends of the fight. Each dogfight was a deadly dance, split-second decisions, dives and climbs determining life or death. Smoke trails and blackened wreckage marked the sky, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. Yet the Germans underestimated not only the pilots, but the people they sought to terrorize. London, Bristol, and other cities bore the weight of nightly bombing raids, but the British spirit remained unbroken. Children learned the rhythm of sirens. Families whispered prayers in dim shelters, and workers repaired damage by dawn. Every bomb that fell strengthened the resolve to endure, to resist. The pilots of the RAF carried this burden with quiet heroism. Many were young men who had never seen war before, thrust into a maelstrom they could neither control nor escape. Fatigue weighed on them. Hunger and cold became companions, yet they climbed again and again, chasing the enemy, protecting civilians, and refusing to let Britain fall from the sky. By mid-September, the Luftwaffe shifted tactics, focusing on London in an attempt to break the will of the British people. But the RAF adapted. Pilots flew multiple sorties in a single day, exhausting themselves to meet every threat. The skies became a game of strategy and endurance, with radar and intelligence offering a critical edge. Victory in the air was measured not just by aircraft destroyed, but territory defended. Every bomber turned away, every Messerschmitt shot down, meant the channel remained a barrier. Operation Sea Lion remained impossible while the few remained in the sky. Amid the chaos, stories of heroism emerged. Pilots from across the British Empire, and even foreign volunteers, Poles, Czechs, Canadians, joined the fight, weaving their bravery into the fabric of Britain's defense. They were ordinary men, yet in those skies they became guardians of a nation,
their courage etched into history.
As bombs fell on cities, as smoke rose over rooftops, as the roar of engines filled the horizon, the few carried the weight of Britain's survival on their shoulders. Each sortie was a battle, each dogfight a testament to determination, skill, and the refusal to yield. They were not just pilots, they were the shield between Hitler's ambition and the freedom of a nation. The Battle of Britain was no longer just a contest of planes, it was a war for the heart of a people. And in those skies, amidst fire and fury, the few proved that courage, resolve, and sacrifice could defy the mightiest of enemies. By October, the Luftwaffe's campaign had begun to falter. Weeks of relentless bombing had taken their toll, but Britain's defenses had held. The few were exhausted, their faces etched with fatigue and determination, yet they continued to climb into the skies day after day, refusing to let Hitler claim the Channel. The German High Command had hoped that repeated raids would shatter morale, that the people of Britain would crumble beneath fire and fear. Yet the opposite occurred. Factories continued to produce aircraft. Repair crews worked tirelessly to patch bombed airfields and replace lost planes. Civilians endured, rebuilding what was destroyed, their courage a silent reinforcement of the pilots above. In the skies, the RAF adapted to every tactic the Luftwaffe devised. Pilots learned the patterns of incoming raids, anticipated enemy formations, and coordinated with radar operators to intercept before the bombers reached their targets. The few were no longer simply defending, they were controlling the battle, shaping the air war to their advantage. The Luftwaffe, frustrated by unexpected resistance and mounting losses, began to withdraw its fighter escorts and bombers in greater numbers. Germany's pilots faced the harsh reality that the RAF had not only survived, they had thrived under pressure. Every sortie that returned safely, every German bomber turned back was a victory that brought Britain closer to security. Stories of heroism continued to emerge. Pilots who had been shot down returned to duty, undeterred by burns, wounds, or broken planes. Squadron leaders inspired by courage and strategy led daring interceptions, often against impossible odds. Their bravery became legend, their actions a lifeline for a nation teetering on the brink. By mid-October, the Luftwaffe shifted focus once again, attempting to draw the RAF into exhausting engagements over the Channel. But the RAF was prepared. Pilots used superior knowledge of terrain, coordinated tactics, and relentless determination to maintain control. For the first time, the momentum of the air war began to favor Britain. The skies that had once been dominated by German formations now saw Spitfires and Hurricanes dictating the pace. Pilots intercepted bombers before they reached cities, disrupted enemy formations, and inflicted severe losses. The Luftwaffe, facing unanticipated resistance and dwindling morale, began to retreat. In London and other cities, the end of the Blitz brought relief but not celebration. The cost had been immense. Civilians lost homes, families mourned, and the scars of war were visible on every street. Yet amidst the destruction, hope remained, bolstered by the knowledge that Britain had survived against overwhelming odds. The few, though weary, knew their mission was not complete until the threat of invasion was gone. Every pilot had faced death countless times, yet they returned to the skies, embodying the resolve of a nation that refused to surrender. Their courage became a symbol of resilience, their skill a demonstration of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming power. By the end of October, the Battle of Britain had reached its conclusion. Hitler's plan for invasion, Operation Sea Lion, was postponed indefinitely. The Luftwaffe had failed to gain air superiority, and Britain had survived. The skies were no longer a domain of terror, but a testament to determination,
strategy, and bravery. The victory was not won by numbers alone. It was won by a combination of courage, innovation, and unwavering will. Radar stations, airfields, ground crews, and civilians all played their part, but it was the 300 pilots, the few, who stood between Britain and occupation. Their names became legendary, their deeds immortal, and their legacy would shape the course of history.
In the aftermath, Britain emerged battered but unbroken. The skies had been defended, cities rebuilt, and the spirit of a nation preserved. The Battle of Britain had proven that courage could outweigh numbers, that determination could overcome terror, and that even in the darkest hour, a few brave individuals could change the fate of a nation. The story of the few is a story of hope, sacrifice, and indomitable courage. It is a reminder that even against overwhelming odds, the human spirit can triumph. In the skies over southern England, ordinary men became heroes, and in doing so, they saved a nation. Among the few, stories of bravery and sacrifice became legends almost as quickly as the battles themselves. Douglas Bader, flying with artificial legs after a horrific accident, became a symbol of defiance and audacity. Despite the limitations of his prosthetics, he led his squadron with skill and daring, often placing himself in the thick of combat, showing that courage mattered more than circumstance. There was also the young Polish pilot, Jan Zumbach, whose skill in aerial combat saved countless lives. Exiled from his homeland, he carried a personal vendetta against the Luftwaffe, yet his actions became part of a collective effort that transcended nationality. Alongside British, Canadian, Czech, and other foreign pilots, these men formed a mosaic of determination, proving that the defense of Britain was a cause that united the world. Dogfights over southern England were as unpredictable as they were deadly. Pilots dove through clouds, chasing enemy fighters in maneuvers that defied gravity and tested every ounce of concentration. One moment, a Messerschmitt would appear out of the sun, bullets shredding the air, and the next, a Spitfire would spin and climb to gain a fleeting advantage. Every second counted. Every decision could mean life or death. Squadron leaders coordinated attacks with precision. Ground controllers, using chain-home radar, directed pilots to incoming waves of bombers. Pilots relied on split-second instincts, their eyes scanning the sky for the flash of enemy aircraft, the plume of smoke that signaled destruction or opportunity. The few were constantly aware that the lives of civilians below and the fate of their nation depended on their actions.
There were moments of triumph and moments of profound loss. Pilots would shoot down enemy aircraft only to watch comrades fall, their planes spiraling to the earth in fire. Letters from home, photographs tucked in flight jackets, and the brief camaraderie of shared meals became small comforts in a war where death was never far away. Amid these harrowing days, acts of extraordinary heroism emerged. Some pilots, even after being wounded, returned to the air within hours. Others, outnumbered and outgunned, held their formation together, protecting less experienced comrades. Every engagement became a test of not only skill, but endurance, mental fortitude, and the will to survive against impossible odds. Civilian observers often saw the dogfights as spectacles of awe and terror. Children in shelters would watch the sky, seeing streaks of silver and black tearing through clouds, while anti-aircraft guns opened fire, sending shells screaming into the sky. For many, the bravery of the few became a symbol of hope. Every plane that returned safely, every bomber turned away, was a victory for Britain. One remarkable story was that of a young Hurricane pilot who, despite engine trouble and heavy damage, managed to intercept a formation of bombers heading for London. He engaged them relentlessly, destroying 2 bombers before his aircraft began to fail. With no time to bail out, he glided his damaged plane over the countryside, saving countless lives below. These were not exceptional men because of their training alone. They were exceptional because they dared to act when the odds were against them. As weeks turned to months, the endurance of the few was tested like never before. Pilots flew multiple sorties a day, often in freezing weather with minimal rest. Each flight demanded precision, bravery, and an unshakable commitment to the defense of Britain. Yet even in exhaustion, they found the strength to continue. Their courage became a shield for a nation, their sacrifice a beacon of defiance. Even as the skies cleared and the intensity of the Luftwaffe raids lessened, the psychological toll on the pilots was immense. They had faced death countless times, witnessed friends fall, and endured the weight of responsibility for millions of lives. Yet they remained steadfast, a testament to human resilience, determination, and the power of unity in the face of overwhelming adversity. By the end of the campaign, the few had not only defended Britain, but had rewritten the rules of aerial warfare. They had shown that skill, courage, and innovation could overcome even the most formidable enemy. Their stories would inspire generations to come, their names immortalized in the annals of history. The Battle of Britain was more than a fight for territory. It was a fight for hope, for freedom, and for the very soul of a nation. In the clouds above southern England, ordinary men became heroes. Their bravery and sacrifice ensured that Britain would survive, and in doing so, changed the course of the Second World War forever. When the last bomb fell and the skies grew quiet, Britain began to breathe again. The cities bore scars, buildings reduced to rubble, streets littered with debris, yet the spirit of the people remained unbroken. The few had held the skies, and in doing so, they had held the nation's hope. The pilots who survived looked back on the battle with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride in what they had achieved, sorrow for those who had not returned. Each name lost, each plane shot down was a reminder of the price of freedom. Yet their actions had ensured that Operation Sea Lion would never happen, that Britain remained a stronghold against the Axis, and that the war could continue with hope alive in the hearts of the Allies. The impact of the Battle of Britain reached far beyond England's shores. Hitler's plans for invasion were shattered, and the Luftwaffe's failure marked the first significant defeat for Nazi Germany. It was a turning point, a moment when determination, courage, and resilience overcame numbers and firepower. The world saw that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, human will could alter history. For the men of the RAF, their legacy would last far beyond the skies of 1940. They became symbols of courage, endurance, and sacrifice. Their stories inspired not only their contemporaries, but generations to come. Monuments, plaques, and memorials now honor their bravery, but the truest testament lies in the freedom they preserved and the nation they saved. By the end of the campaign, the few had not only defended Britain, but had rewritten the rules of aerial warfare. They had shown that skill, courage, and innovation could overcome even the most formidable enemy. Their stories would inspire generations to come, their names immortalized in the annals of history. The Battle of Britain was more than a fight for territory. It was a fight for hope, for freedom, and for the very soul of a nation. In the clouds above southern England, ordinary men became heroes. Their bravery and sacrifice ensured that Britain would survive, and in doing so, changed the course of the Second World War forever. When the last bomb fell and the skies grew quiet, Britain began to breathe again. The cities bore scars, buildings reduced to rubble, streets littered with debris, yet the spirit of the people remained unbroken. The few had held the skies, and in doing so, they had held the nation's hope. The pilots who survived looked back on the battle with a mixture of pride and sorrow. pride in what they had achieved, sorrow for those who had not returned. Each name lost, each plane shot down was a reminder of the price of freedom. Yet their actions had ensured that Operation Sea Lion would never happen, that Britain remained a stronghold against the Axis, and that the war could continue with hope alive in the hearts of the Allies. The impact of the Battle of Britain reached far beyond England's shores. Hitler's plans for invasion were shattered, and the Luftwaffe's failure marked the first significant defeat for Nazi Germany. It was a turning point, a moment when determination, courage, and resilience overcame numbers and firepower. The world saw that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, human will could alter history. For the men of the RAF, their legacy would last far beyond the skies of 1940. They became symbols of courage, endurance, and sacrifice. Their stories inspired not only their contemporaries, but generations to come. Monuments, plaques, and memorials now honor their bravery, but the truest testament lies in the freedom they preserved and the nation they saved.
The story of the Battle of Britain is a story of heroism, sacrifice, and determination. It is a story of a nation that refused to yield, of pilots who risked everything for the freedom of others, and of a moment when 300 men and the people they protected altered the course of the Second World War forever. In remembering the few, we honor not only their skill in the skies, but their unwavering commitment to a cause greater than themselves. They saved a nation, inspired the world, and proved that courage, above all, can triumph over fear. The story of the Battle of Britain is a story of heroism, sacrifice, and determination. It is a story of a nation that refused to yield, of pilots who risked everything for the freedom of others, and of a moment when 300 men and the people they protected altered the course of the Second World War forever. In remembering the few, we honor not only their skill in the skies, but their unwavering commitment to a cause greater than themselves. They saved a nation, inspired the world, and proved that courage, above all, can triumph over fear.